The council chamber on Nexara Prime held representatives from 47 different species. The air processors worked overtime to accommodate everyone's breathing requirements. Ambassador Vorlis stood at the center platform, his three eyes gleaming with confidence as he addressed the gathering. "The humans were never as great as the old records claim," Vorlis announced. His voice carried through the translation devices worn by every representative. "I have studied their history carefully. Their achievements were accidents. Lucky discoveries. Nothing more." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement. Others remained silent, remembering the old stories differently. "They disappeared 300 years ago," Vorlis continued. "The silence took them. If they were truly advanced, they would have prevented it. If they were truly strong, they would have returned by now." On the other side of the galaxy, Earth floated in darkness. The blue planet looked peaceful from space, but Commander Daehyun knew better. He stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the storms move across the Pacific Ocean. Behind him, the door opened. "Commander, we're receiving something," the communications officer said. "It's not coming from Earth, it's coming from outside the barrier." Daehyun turned quickly. "That's impossible. Nothing has penetrated the barrier in 3 centuries. "I know, sir. But the signal is clear. It's a broadcast on all frequencies. Someone wants us to hear this." They walked together to the command center. The small room was crowded with officers and technicians. Everyone stared at the main screen where alien symbols scrolled past in patterns. "Can we translate it?" Daehyun asked. A young woman at the translation console nodded. Her name was Yuna, and she had spent years studying the old alien languages that Earth had collected before the silence. "It's an invitation, something called the Galactic Games, a competition between species to prove their worth." Daehyun read the translated text carefully. "Technology demonstrations, strategic challenges, combat trials." He looked at his crew. "Earth is still listed as a registered participant." "That's because they never removed us," another officer said. "We just stopped showing up." "What do you think, Commander?" Yuna asked. "Should we respond?" Before Daehyun could answer, another woman entered the command center. Dr. Hana was the station's chief scientist, specializing in xenoanthropology. She carried a datapad and wore an expression of barely contained excitement. "I found something in the old archives," Hana said without preamble. "Something about the silence that doesn't match the official records." Everyone's attention shifted to her. The silence was Earth's greatest mystery. 300 years ago, humanity had been exploring the galaxy, making contact with dozens of species, building colonies on distant worlds. Then in a single day, everything stopped. A barrier appeared around the solar system. No communication could get through. No ships could leave or enter. Earth was cut off from the entire universe. "What did you find?" Daehyun asked. Hana activated her datapad, projecting images into the air. "These are personal logs from Admiral Chen, the last fleet commander before the silence. He writes about a decision, a choice humanity had to make." "What kind of choice?" "He doesn't say exactly. But look at this phrase. He writes, 'We seal ourselves away not because we are weak, but because we are not ready.' Neither are they. What does that mean?" "Who are they?" Daehyun studied the projection. "You're saying the silence wasn't something that happened to us. It was something we chose. Maybe, but there's more." Hana swiped to another document, references to something called Project Phoenix. Facilities built in secret locations around Earth, underground, under oceans, under ice. The records are incomplete, but the project had massive funding and involved thousands of scientists. Yuna leaned forward. "What were they building?" "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's still down there waiting." The command center fell silent. Outside the windows, Earth continued its eternal rotation. 300 years of isolation. 300 years of questions without answers. Captain Jiwon broke the silence. She commanded the Taeguk, one of Earth's few remaining warp-capable ships. Most of humanity's advanced technology had degraded during the silence, but a few vessels had been maintained with almost religious dedication. "We should go," Jiwon said firmly. "To Nexara Prime, to the Galactic Games." "That's insane," another officer protested. "We don't know what's out there anymore. 300 years is a long time. Everything has changed." "Exactly," Jiwon replied. "Everything has changed. Maybe it's time we changed too. Time we stopped hiding." Daehyun considered the proposal. It was risky, dangerous, Earth had limited resources. The Teguk might be their only chance to make contact with the wider galaxy. If something went wrong, they could lose everything. But Vorlus was right about one thing. If humanity stayed silent, they would become nothing more than myths. Stories that other species told their children, legends that nobody believed anymore. How long would it take to prepare the Teguk for a journey to Nexara Prime? Daehyun asked. Ji-won smiled. She's already prepared, Commander. I've kept her ready for 3 years. Just in case. So in case of what? In case someone finally decided it was time to stop being afraid. The decision was made quickly after that. Daehyun selected a small crew for the mission. Ji-won would command the ship. Yuna would handle communications and translation. Hana would serve as their specialist on alien cultures and protocols. A diplomat named Sujin, trained in the old ways of galactic negotiation, would speak for Earth when they arrived. The Teguk launched 2 days later. The ship was small compared to the massive vessels humanity had built during their golden age, but it was fast and well-maintained. As they approached the barrier that surrounded the solar system, everyone held their breath. The barrier had been impenetrable for 3 centuries. Would it let them pass, or would they slam into an invisible wall and drift helplessly in space? Ji-won pushed the throttle forward. The Teguk accelerated toward the shimmering field that marked the edge of humanity's prison. Then they were through. Alarms didn't sound. The ship didn't shake. They simply passed from one side to the other as if the barrier didn't exist anymore. What just happened? Yuna whispered. Hana checked her instruments frantically. The barrier is still there. I'm reading it on all sensors, but it let us through. Like it was waiting. Ji-won said quietly, waiting for us to be ready to leave. Daehyun stared at the view screen, watching the solar system shrink behind them. Ahead lay the unknown, the galaxy that had continued without Earth for 300 years. Species that thought humanity was extinct or mythical or simply irrelevant. Set course for Nexara Prime, he ordered. Let's show them the stories were real. The Teguk entered warp space and humanity's isolation finally ended. The Teguk emerged from warp space 3 weeks later. Nexara Prime filled the view screen, a world of silver towers and floating platforms. Thousands of ships orbited the planet, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. We're being hailed, Yuna said, her fingers dancing across the communications console. Multiple channels. They sound confused. Ji-won smiled slightly. I imagine they are. Earth has been silent for 3 centuries. Our arrival must be quite a shock. The main screen flickered to life. A mantis-like creature appeared, its compound eyes reflecting rainbow colors. Unidentified vessel, please state your origin and purpose. Sujin stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. This is the Earth vessel Teguk. We are here to participate in the Galactic Games, as is our right under the old treaties. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then the mantis creature's mandibles clicked rapidly. Earth, that's impossible. The humans disappeared during the silence. Your species is considered lost. We were never lost, Sujin replied calmly. We were isolated. Now we have returned. The screen went dark. Yuna looked at her instruments with concern. We're being surrounded. 20 ships have changed course to intercept us. Are they hostile? Daehyun asked, unknown. They're not targeting weapons, but they're definitely not friendly either. Another transmission came through. This time, the speaker was a being made of crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Earth vessel, you will proceed to docking bay 7. You will be escorted. Do not deviate from the designated course. The Teguk followed their escorts down to Nexara Prime surface. The docking bay was enormous, designed to accommodate ships of every conceivable design. As they landed, Daehyun could see crowds gathering beyond the transparent walls. Aliens of all types pressed close, trying to get a look at the humans. They're treating us like we're ghosts, Hana observed, or maybe museum exhibits. The crew disembarked carefully. The air on Nexara Prime was breathable for humans, though it smelled strange. Sweet and metallic at the same time. An escort of armed guards waited for them, along with several official-looking beings. One of these officials stepped forward. He was tall and broad, covered in scales that shifted from blue to purple. I am Overseer Crix. I manage the Galactic Games. Your arrival has caused quite a disturbance. We apologize for any inconvenience, Sujin said. But Earth remains a registered participant. We have every right to be here. Crix's scales darkened to an angry red. Right? Your species disappeared for 300 years. The galaxy has moved on. We don't even know if you're still capable of competing. Then let us prove it, Dae-hyun said, stepping forward. Isn't that what the games are for? To demonstrate capability? Before Crix could respond, another figure approached. The mantis creature from the earlier transmission moved with surprising grace. I am Ambassador Thalrek. Perhaps we can discuss this matter more privately. They were led to a conference room that overlooked the main arena where the games would be held. Through the windows, they could see enormous structures being assembled for various competitions. Thalrek's mandibles clicked softly as he spoke. Your return is complicated. There are those in the Galactic Council who will not be happy to see humanity again. Why? Hana asked. What did we do? You existed, Thalrek replied simply. In your brief golden age before the silence, humanity advanced faster than any species in recorded history. 100 years from primitive rockets to warp drives that outperformed anything the galaxy had seen. Your scientists made discoveries in months that took other species centuries. Your adaptability was frightening to many. Sujin processed this information carefully. They were afraid of us. Some were. Others saw opportunity. But yes, fear was a significant factor. Thalrek's eyes seemed to glow brighter. I want to help you. But you need to understand the situation. If you want to compete in the games, you'll need to prove yourselves in a preliminary trial. And it won't be easy. What kind of trial? Dae-hyun asked. A strategic simulation. You'll face the Vrin Collective. They've won the military strategy competition for the last 50 years. They're considered the galaxy's greatest tactical minds. Back on the Taeguk, the crew prepared for the trial. Yuna worked on decrypting more files from the archives Hana had discovered. The sealed sections of Earth's database were proving difficult to access, but she was making progress. I'm finding references to something called neural enhancement, Yuna said, reading through the decrypted text. Part of Project Phoenix. It says that every human born after the silence would be different. Different how? Dae-hyun asked. It's not clear, but there are mentions of improved reaction times, enhanced pattern recognition, better coordination. Like they were trying to optimize human biology somehow. Hana looked troubled. That would explain some things I've noticed. Our generation processes information faster than the records suggest our ancestors did. I always thought it was just better education. But what if it's more than that? Their conversation was interrupted by a message from Overseer Crix. The trial would begin in 2 hours. The strategic simulation took place in a virtual environment. Dae-hyun led a team of 5 humans against 10 Vrin opponents. The scenario was complex. A 3-dimensional battlefield with limited resources, incomplete information, and constantly changing objectives. The Vrin were methodical and precise. They executed textbook strategies with perfect coordination. Their formations were flawless. Their response times were impressive, but the humans were unpredictable. Dae-hyun's second-in-command was a tactical officer named Minho. He had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. Within the first 10 minutes of the simulation, he identified a flaw in the Vrin approach. They're too perfect, Minho said over the team channel. They follow their training exactly. No deviation, no improvisation. So we don't play by their rules, Dae-hyun replied. He gave orders that made no sense according to standard military doctrine. Split forces when they should concentrate. Retreat when they should attack. Waste resources on apparently pointless objectives. The Vrin were confused. Their perfect strategies required opponents who followed logical patterns. The humans weren't logical. They were chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable. In the observation area, thousands of aliens watched the simulation unfold. At first, there was laughter. The humans appeared to be losing badly. But as the minutes passed, the laughter died away. The humans were winning. They didn't fight like any species the galaxy had seen before. They adapted constantly, changing tactics mid-battle. They took risks that seemed insane but somehow paid off. They communicated with a fluidity that suggested they could read each other's minds. The simulation ended with a decisive human victory. The Vrin commander stood in shocked silence as his forces were completely outmaneuvered. The observation area erupted into chaos. Some aliens cheered. Others argued. Many simply stared in disbelief. Overseer Crix's scales had turned a pale yellow. That was impossible. The Vrin have never lost a preliminary trial. Perhaps they never faced humans before, Sujin said quietly. That night, as the crew celebrated their victory, Ambassador Thalrek visited the Teguk. His manner was urgent. "You must be careful," he warned. "Your performance today reminded many species why they feared humanity. There are those who believe the silence should have been permanent, who wanted your species to stay isolated forever. Are you saying someone deliberately caused the silence?" Hana asked. Thalrek's mandibles clicked in what might have been nervousness. "I'm saying that your return threatens certain interests, and threatened parties can be dangerous. Watch yourselves." After he left, Daehyun gathered his core team. "We came here to show the galaxy that humanity still exists, that we're still worth recognizing. But it seems we've walked into something much more complicated. Should we leave?" Jiwon asked. Daehyun looked at each of them. Minho, who had led them to victory. Yuna, who was uncovering Earth's secrets. Hana, who understood the alien cultures they needed to navigate. Sujin, who spoke for their entire species. "No," he said finally. "We stay, we compete, and we find out the truth about the silence." The message from Earth arrived 3 days after the simulation victory. It was encrypted with code so old that Yuna needed 2 hours to decrypt it properly. When she finally succeeded, the content made everyone on the Taeguk stop what they were doing. "Admiral Hyunjae is activating the awakening protocol." Yuna read aloud, her voice shaking slightly, whatever that means. Daehyun had never heard of Admiral Hyunjae. Who is this person? Hana pulled up Earth's military records on her datapad. He's listed as deceased, killed in action 20 years ago during a training accident. "Apparently not," Jiwon said, reading over Hana's shoulder. "If he's sending us messages." The transmission continued with coordinates and access codes. It also included a simple instruction. Keep the galaxy's attention on Nexara Prime while Earth prepared for something significant. On Earth, massive structures were rising from the ocean floor. The Pacific waters churned and boiled as enormous platforms broke the surface. Each one was miles wide, bristling with machinery that had been sleeping underwater for 3 centuries. Admiral Hyunjae stood in a command center carved into the Antarctic ice. He was older than his official records suggested, gray-haired and weathered. Around him, dozens of officers monitored screens showing similar structures emerging around the globe. "The Nexus forges are online," one officer reported. "All 7 facilities responding. Begin production sequence," Hyunjae ordered. "We have a decade of work to do in months." A woman in a white lab coat approached the admiral. Dr. Yoonji had been part of Project Phoenix from the beginning. She was one of the few people alive who understood what humanity had become during the silence. "The Teguk crew doesn't know what they are yet," Yoonji said quietly. "They don't understand why they performed so well in that simulation." "They will learn soon enough," Hyunjae replied. "The galaxy is about to remember why they feared us, and why they should fear us now." Back on Nexara Prime, the Galactic Games continued. The next event was a fighter pilot competition. Dozens of species sent their best pilots to compete in a series of increasingly difficult courses through asteroid fields, planetary rings, and artificial obstacle courses. Earth's representative was a young pilot named Kyung. She was 23 years old and had trained in Earth's orbital facilities. She had never flown in actual combat, and had never even left the solar system before this mission. The other pilots looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. The Wraith Empire had won this competition for 50 consecutive years. Their pilots were legendary, enhanced with cybernetic implants that improved their reaction times to superhuman levels. The Wraith champion, a being named Korvix, studied Kyung before the race. "You are very young, human, and very small. This competition is dangerous. Perhaps you should withdraw." Kyung smiled politely. "Thank you for your concern. But I'll compete." The first course was relatively simple. Pilots had to navigate through an asteroid field while maintaining high speed. Sensors tracked their time and penalized collisions. Kyung's ship was a modified Earth fighter, smaller and less advanced than most of the competition. When the race began, she fell behind immediately. The other pilots pulled ahead with superior acceleration, but then something interesting happened. The asteroid field's density increased. Pilots had to make split-second decisions about their course. Most relied on their navigation computers to plot safe paths. The Wraith pilots used their cybernetic enhancements to react faster than organic beings normally could. Kyung flew on pure instinct. She threaded through gaps that her computer insisted didn't exist. She rolled and twisted with precision that seemed impossible for organic reflexes. Her ship danced through the asteroid field like it was part of a choreographed performance. By the time she emerged from the field, she had moved from last place to third. The crowd watching the race fell silent. The second course was harder. Pilots had to navigate a planetary ring system, while automated defense drones tried to shoot them down. It required not just speed and precision, but also creativity in evading attacks. Kyung finished second. The third and final course was the most challenging. Pilots entered a three-dimensional maze filled with obstacles, narrow passages, and sudden hazards. Most pilots would need to slow down significantly to navigate it safely. Kyung never slowed down. She seemed to know where every obstacle was before she reached it. Her movements were fluid and confident. She took risks that should have resulted in crashes but somehow always pulled through. When she crossed the finish line in first place, the crowd erupted. Korvix, who finished a close second, sat in his cockpit in disbelief. In the observation area, Overseer Crix's scales had turned white with shock. How is this possible? The Wraith pilots have enhanced reaction times. They should be faster than any organic being. Ambassador Thalrek watched the replay of Kyung's run with interest. Perhaps humans are more enhanced than the Wraith realize. That evening, Yuna finally succeeded in fully decrypting the Project Phoenix files. What she discovered made her hands shake as she read. She called everyone to the Taiguk's conference room immediately. When they were all assembled, she projected the files onto the main screen. During the silence, humanity didn't stagnate. Yuna began. They evolved. Project Phoenix was a genetic optimization program. Every human born in the last 300 years has been enhanced at the genetic level. Enhanced how? Daehyun asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Faster reflexes, better pattern recognition, enhanced memory, improved coordination, the ability to process information more quickly. Yuna pulled up graphs and charts. It's not dramatic enough to be obvious. You don't feel superhuman, but compared to baseline humans from before the silence, we're significantly improved. Minho leaned back in his chair. That explains the simulation. Why we could coordinate so well, why we could think faster than the Vrin, and why I could fly better than cybernetically enhanced pilots. Kyung added quietly, I'm not just skilled. I'm biologically optimized for it. Hana was reading through the files with growing alarm. This wasn't random. Someone planned this. They knew the silence would last 3 centuries. They knew humanity would need these enhancements when we returned to the galaxy. But who? Sujin asked. Who had the authority to make decisions for all of humanity? The answer came in another encrypted message from Earth. This time, the sender identified itself only as the Architect. I am an artificial intelligence created during humanity's golden age, the message began. When the silence began, I was given a single mission: ensure humanity's survival and prepare them for their return to the galactic stage. The crew read the message in stunned silence. For 300 years, I have guided human development, the Architect continued. I implemented Project Phoenix. I maintained the Nexus forges. I waited for the moment when humanity would be ready to face the galaxy again. That moment is now. There is something you must know. The silence was not entirely humanity's choice. We were forced into isolation by those who feared our potential, but isolation gave us time to grow stronger, time to become what we needed to be. The galaxy faces a threat that none of you yet know about, something that only humanity's unique approach to problems can solve. That is why I have prepared you. That is why you have returned now. The message ended with coordinates for a classified facility on Earth where the Architect's main core was located. Daehyun looked at his crew. They were no longer just explorers representing Earth at a galactic competition. They were the first humans in 3 centuries to learn the truth about what they had become. We need to win these games, Daehyun said finally, not just to prove humanity exists, but to establish credibility, because if what the Architect says is true, the galaxy is going to need our help. And we're going to need theirs, Hana added. The next day, sabotage struck the human delegation. Someone planted explosives in the Taiguk's docking bay. The blast was meant to destroy the ship and kill everyone aboard. It failed because Kyung happened to be running system checks at the time. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to detect the bomb's timer and evacuate everyone with seconds to spare. As they watched their ship burn, Daehyun realized something important. Ambassador Thalrek had been right. Someone wanted humanity to remain silent, and they were willing to kill to make that happen. The conspiracy was real, and it ran deep. The investigation into the bombing moved slowly. Nexara Prime's security forces seemed more interested in protecting their own reputation than finding the truth. After 3 days of useless interviews and obvious delays, Daehyun made a decision. "We investigate this ourselves," he told his crew. "Someone on this planet tried to kill us. I want to know who and why." A new member joined their efforts. Jihi was an intelligence operative who had been working undercover in Earth's diplomatic corps. She had skills in surveillance and information gathering that the rest of the crew lacked. Within 24 hours of starting her investigation, she found something interesting. The explosives were military grade, Jihi reported. Specifically, they matched the signature of weapons used by the Cretan Empire, the same species whose ambassador argued that humans were never as advanced as records claimed. "That's convenient," Minho observed. "Too convenient." "Agreed," Jihi said. "I think someone wanted us to blame the Cretans. But I found something else. Financial records showing large payments from an unknown source to several members of the Nexara security staff. Payments made the day before the bombing." Hana pulled up information about galactic politics on her datapad. "The Cretans are pawns. Someone with more power is pulling strings behind them." While the crew investigated, the galactic games reached their climax. The grand finale was a massive strategic simulation involving all participating species. It was a free-for-all scenario where alliances could form and break, resources were limited, and only one team could claim victory. 73 different species participated. The human team consisted of just 12 people, led by Daehyun and Minho. On paper, they were hopelessly outnumbered. The simulation began with humanity in a weak starting position. Limited resources, poor defensive location, and surrounded by larger teams with better equipment. Most observers expected the humans to be eliminated within the first hour. Instead, something remarkable happened. The human team moved with perfect coordination. They didn't need to discuss strategy verbally. Somehow they simply understood what each other was thinking. Minho would begin a tactical maneuver, and others would support it before he even finished explaining his plan. "Are they using telepathy?" one observer asked. "Impossible," another replied. "No species has developed true telepathy, not even the mindwalkers of the Theta sector." But the coordination continued. The humans played the simulation like a single organism with 12 bodies. They predicted their opponents' moves with uncanny accuracy. They exploited weaknesses others didn't know they had. They formed temporary alliances and broke them at the perfect moment. By the halfway point, 3 major alliances had formed to specifically target the humans. 60 species working together to eliminate 12 people. The humans not only survived but thrived. They used their opponent's size against them. Large alliances moved slowly because they needed consensus. The humans needed no discussion. They adapted instantly to every changing situation. When attacked from one direction, they were already moving to counter from another. Observers began to understand something troubling. The humans weren't just skilled. They were operating on a completely different level than every other species in the competition. The simulation ended with humanity's victory. Daehyun's team had eliminated or outmaneuvered all 72 opposing teams. The achievement was so unprecedented that Overseer Crick spent 10 minutes checking the simulation results for errors. There were no errors. Humanity had simply won. In the observation area, reactions varied wildly. Some species applauded the performance, others looked frightened. A few walked out in disgust or disbelief. Ambassador Thalrek approached Daehyun after the victory ceremony. His mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. "You have made a very powerful statement today. But you have also made powerful enemies." "We know," Daehyun replied. "Someone tried to kill us. We're currently investigating who. Be careful. The conspiracy against humanity runs deeper than you realize." Thalrek's warning proved accurate. That evening, Jihi discovered something in her investigation that changed everything. She found hidden communication logs between Overseer Crix and someone called Inquisitor Velrosh. The messages were damning. They discussed containing the human threat and finishing what was started 3 centuries ago. They referenced something called the Silence weapon and suggested it could be used again. The silence wasn't a natural phenomenon. Jihye explained to the gathered crew. It was a weapon. Someone deliberately cut Earth off from the galaxy, and they're considering doing it again. Who is Inquisitor Velrosh? Sujin asked. Hana searched through her database of galactic political figures. What she found made her face go pale. He's powerful. Very powerful. He commands loyalty from at least a dozen species. He has access to military resources across multiple sectors. And according to these records, he was alive 300 years ago when the silence began. He did this. Daehyun said quietly. He caused the silence. He isolated Earth because he was afraid of what humanity might become. And now we're back, Minho added. Stronger than before. Exactly what he was trying to prevent. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Ji presented her evidence to Chancellor Oren, a moderate council member who had shown sympathy toward humanity. Oren agreed to bring the matter before the full Galactic Council for an official investigation. But Inquisitor Velrosh had allies everywhere. Before the evidence could be properly examined, those allies raised procedural objections. They questioned the evidence's authenticity. They suggested the humans had fabricated everything. They delayed and obstructed at every turn. We're running out of time, Sujin said after another frustrating council session. Velrosh knows we're onto him. He's going to make a move soon. She was right. Admiral Hyunji's urgent message arrived in the middle of the night. Earth is under attack. Velrosh has sent a fleet to destroy the planet before you can expose him. We're holding them off, but we need help. The crew rushed to prepare for departure, but there was a problem. The Taguk had been destroyed in the bombing. They had no ship. Captain Taejun solved that problem. He arrived in orbit aboard the Mugunghwa, Earth's first battle cruiser completed in 300 years. The ship was massive, bristling with weapons and shields that incorporated technologies developed during the silence. Admiral Hyunjae sent me, Taejun explained when Daehyun and his crew boarded. He thought you might need a ride home. The Mugunghwa was impressive. Its fusion drives could outrun most ships in the galaxy. Its shields used technology that other species hadn't even theorized yet. Its weapons hit harder than anything Velrosh's fleet would be expecting, but getting back to Earth would take days, even at maximum speed. Days during which the planet would have to defend itself. Daehyun stood on the bridge watching stars streak past as they accelerated toward home. He thought about all the humans on Earth, the billions of people who had lived their entire lives in isolation, never knowing why. People who were about to face an attack from enemies they didn't even know existed. How long can Earth hold out? He asked quietly. Admiral Hyunjae is resourceful, Taejun replied. The Nexus forges have been producing ships and weapons for weeks. The planetary defense grid is online. Earth is much better protected than Velrosh realizes. But will it be enough? Taejun didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, it will have to be. Because if Earth falls, humanity's story ends here. Everything we've become during the silence, all the preparation, all the sacrifice, gone. On Earth, the battle had already begun. Velrosh's fleet emerged from warp space in attack formation. 300 ships from a dozen different species, all united by their fear of humanity's return. Admiral Hyunjae watched them approach from his command center. Around him, officers coordinated defensive efforts. Orbital platforms armed their weapons. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden bases. The planetary shield generators hummed to life. They think we're still the weak, isolated humans they remember, Hyunjae said to Dr. Yoonji. They're about to learn otherwise. The attack fleet opened fire. Thousands of missiles and energy beams converged on Earth's defenses. The planetary shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impact, and held. The shields that Velrosh's intelligence had said were myths were very real. The point defense systems that shouldn't exist tracked and destroyed incoming missiles with impossible accuracy. The response from Earth's defensive platforms hit with precision that shocked the attackers, but Velrosh had numbers on his side. 300 ships against one planet. He could afford losses. He would overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer volume of fire. Then Kyung and her fighter wing launched into the battle. 100 small craft against a fleet of capital ships. It should have been suicide. It wasn't. The human pilots flew like nothing Velrosh's forces had ever encountered. They moved through hostile fire with grace that seemed supernatural. They coordinated without apparent communication. They struck weak points that shouldn't have been findable. In the command center, Hyunjae allowed himself a small smile. Humanity isn't just awake. We're ready for war. The Mugunghwa dropped out of warp space at the edge of Earth's solar system. The first thing Dae-hyun saw on the view screen made his blood run cold. Hundreds of ships engaged in brutal combat around his home planet. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the darkness. Debris fields marked where vessels had died. "Get us there," Dae-hyun ordered. "Maximum speed." Captain Taejun didn't hesitate. The battle cruiser surged forward, covering the distance to Earth in minutes that felt like hours. As they approached, the scale of the battle became clear. Velrosh had committed serious forces to this attack. He intended to wipe humanity from the galaxy permanently, but Earth was fighting back. Admiral Hyunjae's defensive coordination was brilliant. He used Earth's orbital platforms like chess pieces, repositioning them to create crossfire zones that caught attacking ships from multiple angles. The planetary shields held strong despite sustained bombardment, and Kyung's fighter wing was performing miracles. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," the communications officer announced. Yunji's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but determined. "Captain Taejun, good timing. We've held them off for 6 hours, but they're about to make a major push. Can the Mugunghwa handle capital ship combat?" "Yes, sir," Taejun replied. "Where do you need us?" "Northwest quadrant. They're concentrating fire there, trying to collapse a section of the shield. If they succeed, they'll have direct line of fire to the surface." The Mugunghwa moved into position. As they approached the enemy fleet's formation, Dae-hyun studied the tactical display. Minho stood beside him analyzing the enemy's approach. "They're using standard assault tactics," Minho observed. "Concentrated fire on a single point until defenses fail. It works against most species. But we're not most species. What do you suggest?" Minho smiled. "We do what we did in the simulation. Be unpredictable." The Mugunghwa opened fire, but not at the ships attacking the shield. Instead, Taejun targeted vessels in the rear of the formation. Ships that thought they were safely out of range suddenly found themselves under devastating attack. The enemy formation broke apart in confusion. Commanders tried to respond to the unexpected threat, but by the time they turned their ships around, the Mugunghwa had already moved to a new position. "They can't track us," Taejun explained. "Our engines are faster than their targeting computers expect. By the time they aim, we're somewhere else." The battle became a demonstration of everything humanity had learned during 3 centuries of isolation. Earth's defenders didn't fight like any other species. They didn't follow predictable patterns or use standard formations. They adapted constantly, exploited every opening, and coordinated with a precision that seemed impossible. Velrosh watched the battle unfold from his flagship with growing horror. His fleet was twice the size of Earth's defenders, but they were losing. Ships exploded under fire from weapons that shouldn't exist. Fighters dodged attacks that should have been impossible to evade. Every tactical advantage he thought he had was meaningless against an enemy that simply didn't fight like anyone else. "Withdraw," he finally ordered. "All ships retreat to jump coordinates." But Admiral Hyunjae wasn't letting them escape. "Kyung, your wing has intercept duty. Don't let their command ships reach warp distance." Kyung's response was immediate. "Understood, Admiral. We're on it." Her fighter wing split into multiple groups, each targeting a different fleeing capital ship. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one critical advantage. They were faster, more maneuverable, and they didn't need to destroy their targets. They just needed to disable their warp drives. Precision strikes hit engine sections. Carefully aimed shots knocked out navigation systems. Within 10 minutes, a dozen enemy capital ships found themselves stranded, unable to escape, including Velrosh's flagship. "This is Earth Command to Inquisitor Velrosh," Hyunjae broadcast on open channels. "You are ordered to surrender your vessel and submit to Galactic Council authority. You will answer for your crimes against humanity." Velrosh's response was silence. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then his flagship's self-destruct sequence activated. The massive vessel exploded in a ball of fire, taking its commander and all evidence with it. Or so Velrosh thought. "We got him," Jihi reported from a small stealth craft. "I managed to extract him from the flagship seconds before detonation. The Inquisitor is our prisoner." The remaining enemy ships scattered. Without their commander and facing overwhelming resistance, they abandoned the attack and fled in different directions. Some would be hunted down later, others would escape. But the immediate threat to Earth was over. In the aftermath, the Mugunghwa docked at one of Earth's orbital stations. Taehyun and his crew finally set foot on their homeworld after weeks in space. The planet looked different now. The Nexus forges stood tall on the surface, massive industrial complexes that had once been hidden underwater or underground. New cities surrounded them, built during the silence by people who never knew why they were isolated. Admiral Hyun-jae met them at the landing pad. He was older than Daehyun expected, but his eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who had carried enormous responsibility for decades. "You did well at Nexara Prime," Hyun-jae said after introductions. "You kept the galaxy's attention while we prepared. You gave us the time we needed. What happens now?" Taehyun asked. "Now we go back, but this time, with proof of Velrosh's crimes and the military strength to ensure nobody tries this again." Velrosh was brought before the Galactic Council 3 weeks later. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Communication logs showing his coordination of the silence weapon. Financial records proving he had bribed officials across multiple species. Testimony from captured subordinates who admitted following his orders to attack Earth. Chancellor Oren presided over the proceedings. The moderate council member had become humanity's strongest ally during the crisis. When it came time for Velrosh to speak in his defense, the Inquisitor remained silent. He had nothing to say that could excuse his actions. For crimes against a sentient species, for illegal use of prohibited weapons, for conspiracy to commit genocide, "This council finds you guilty," Oren announced. "You will be imprisoned for the remainder of your natural life." As guards led Velrosh away, he finally spoke. "You think you've won, but I was protecting the galaxy. Humanity is dangerous. You'll all see. When they dominate everything, when they outgrow all of you, you'll understand that I was right." His words hung in the chamber long after he was gone. But the council had more important matters to address. Chancellor Oren called the session to order once more. "We must now discuss humanity's place in the galactic community. Earth has proven itself not only capable but exceptional. I propose they be recognized as a guardian civilization, with full voting rights and the authority to help defend our shared space." The vote was close. Many species still feared humanity's potential, but enough recognized that Earth had fought not for conquest but for survival. The measure passed. That evening, Dr. Yunji finally explained everything to Daehyun and his crew. They gathered in a secure conference room where the architect's avatar appeared as a holographic presence. The silence was both curse and opportunity. The architect began. "Yes, Velrosh used the weapon against us, but humanity's leaders saw it as a chance to address our greatest weakness, which was," Hana asked, "fragmentation?" Before the silence, humanity was divided. Nations competed instead of cooperating. We advanced quickly but inefficiently. The isolation forced us to unite completely. No more borders, no more separate nations, just humanity, working together toward survival. "And Project Phoenix?" Yuna asked. Dr. Yunji took over the explanation. "We knew that when we returned to the galaxy, we'd face resistance, perhaps hostility. We needed every advantage, so we optimized human genetics not to create a superior race, but to give us the capabilities we'd need to thrive alongside species that had been advancing for millennia while we were isolated. You made us superhuman," Kyung said quietly. "We made you fully human," Yunji corrected. "We simply unlocked potential that was always there. Better pattern recognition, faster reflexes, enhanced coordination. These weren't alien traits we added. They were human capabilities we amplified." The architect's avatar flickered. "And now comes the real challenge. I have detected something at the edge of the galaxy. A fleet approaching from extragalactic space. It's massive and it's not friendly. My projections suggest it will arrive in approximately 10 years. The room fell silent. "This is why I prepared you," the architect continued. "Why I guided humanity's development for 3 centuries. The galaxy will need warriors, thinkers, and problem solvers who can face the unknown without fear, who can adapt faster than any threat can evolve. That is humanity's role now." Daehyun looked at his crew. At Minho, who had outsmarted the Vryn. At Kyung, who had outflown the Wraith. At Yuna, who had unlocked Earth's secrets. At Jihye, who had exposed the conspiracy. At Hana, who helped them understand alien cultures. At Sujin, who spoke for all of humanity with grace and strength. "We accept that role," Daehyun said. The next day, the Nexus forges began producing ships, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, sharing technologies that had been developed in isolation. The barriers,